The girl walked into the classroom feeling a little nervous. It was the first day of the new school term, and she did not know anyone. She kept her books close to her chest and looked around quietly. The walls were bright with colorful posters, and the students were already chatting in small groups. She noticed the laughter and quick whispers, and she wondered if she would ever fit in. She chose a seat near the back, hoping no one would notice her too much. Her hair was neatly tied back, and her clothes were simple and clean. She did not have expensive shoes or a fancy bag like some other students, but she did not mind. She only wanted to be herself and learn. At first, the other students did not pay her much attention. Some of them whispered to each other, pointing at her and smiling in a way that made her feel small. She tried not to let it bother her. She opened her notebook and wrote down her name on the first page. She wanted to remember this moment as the start of something new, even if it felt scary. The teacher came in and greeted the class warmly. She spoke with energy and asked the students to introduce themselves. One by one, they shared their names and a little about themselves. When it was the girl's turn, she stood up quietly and said her name in a soft voice. She smiled politely at the class, and her hands shook just a little. Some students giggled quietly at the way she spoke, but she kept her head high and returned to her seat. After introductions, the teacher gave a short lesson and asked questions. The girl listened carefully and tried to answer when she could. Sometimes she spoke up, but her voice was quiet and some students ignored her or talked over her. She noticed how they laughed and nudged each other, and she felt a little sad. She wondered why being quiet made people treat her differently. But she reminded herself that she did not need their approval. She just wanted to do her best. During the first break, the students moved quickly to different groups. The girl stood alone, holding her bag, unsure where to go. A few students looked at her and smiled in a way that did not feel kind. They whispered and walked past her. She felt invisible, but she did not run away. Instead, she took a deep breath and decided to walk slowly around the playground. She wanted to see what was happening and maybe find someone friendly. She noticed a girl sitting alone under a tree, reading a book. The girl approached her and asked softly, "Can I sit here?" The other girl nodded, and they sat together. They did not talk much, but sharing the space made the first girl feel a little better. She realized that even in a crowded school there were others who also felt like outsiders. She did not have many friends yet, but she decided to be patient. In the following days, the girl continued to keep to herself but worked hard in class. She asked questions when she did not understand and helped others when they struggled with lessons. Sometimes students noticed her effort, but most of the time they just passed by without a word. She learned to focus on her own growth rather than trying to get attention from everyone. Her notebooks were filled with neat handwriting, and her desk was always organized. Teachers noticed that she completed her assignments on time and showed care in her work. Despite her efforts, some students continued to make small jokes at her expense. They teased her for speaking softly, for wearing simple clothes, and for not having the latest gadgets. The girl felt a mix of emotions: hurt, confusion, and sometimes embarrassment. But she refused to join in the teasing or to respond with anger. She had learned from home that kindness and patience were stronger than loud words or anger. She found little joys in her days, even if others overlooked her. She liked walking to the library after class and exploring the books on different shelves. She enjoyed quiet moments where she could draw or write stories in her notebook. These small activities made her feel connected to herself, even when the world around her felt unkind or dismissive. Slowly, she began to notice the power of her own calm and careful approach to life. Her teachers began to see that she was more than just a quiet student. In group activities, she observed carefully and suggested ideas that were thoughtful and organized. Even if her classmates did not respond at first, the teacher quietly made notes of her abilities. She was not seeking praise, but she noticed that recognition started coming in small ways, like a nod of approval or a kind comment from a teacher. The girl's parents encouraged her from home. They reminded her that being herself was more important than trying to fit in. They told her that real strength came from patience, understanding, and doing the right thing even when no one noticed. She carried these lessons with her every day, helping her face the challenges at school with courage. One rainy afternoon, while most students rushed to avoid getting wet, the girl helped another student who had dropped her books. She bent down calmly, picked them up, and returned them with a smile. The other student thanked her, and for the first time that week, a classmate smiled genuinely at her. She felt a warm feeling in her chest. It was a small moment, but it mattered greatly to her. She realized that even small acts of kindness could start to change the way people saw her. Days turned into weeks, and the girl continued her quiet journey. She still faced teasing and dismissal, but she also started forming small connections. She smiled at people in the hallway, helped when she could, and kept doing her best in class. Some students started noticing her reliability and her calm presence. They did not always say it aloud, but the small gestures, like letting her go first in a line or asking her opinion, showed that she was beginning to matter. Evenings were her time to reflect. She would sit by her window, thinking about the day and planning how she could improve tomorrow. She did not dwell on the teasing, but considered what she could learn from every experience. Her journal became a place for hope, dreams, and quiet self-encouragement. Writing helped her understand that being dismissed did not make her weak. It gave her a chance to grow stronger inside. The first part of her school life was challenging, but it also built her character. She learned patience, kindness, and the importance of being true to herself. The quiet girl who had walked into the classroom on the first day began to understand her own power. She might have been overlooked and dismissed, but she was laying the foundation to become someone who could make a real difference, even if it was not yet visible to everyone else. The days passed, and the girl continued to move quietly through her school life. She arrived every morning with a small smile, greeting the janitor, the teacher, and anyone who looked her way. She never demanded attention, and she never complained when she was overlooked. She carried herself with a calmness that made her seem invisible to some, yet those who observed carefully could see the strength in her eyes. In class, she noticed students struggling with their lessons. Some could not solve math problems, while others hesitated to speak in English or other subjects. The girl quietly offered help. She would lean over and show them a method, explain a concept in a simple way, or encourage them to try again. Sometimes the other students looked surprised. They were used to people boasting about what they knew, not quietly offering help without expecting anything in return. One afternoon, during group work, the girl noticed that her group was not organized. Ideas were scattered and no one seemed willing to lead. She waited quietly at first, listening. Then she spoke softly, suggesting a way to divide tasks. Some students ignored her, thinking she would not matter. But she calmly explained, step by step, how everyone could contribute and finish the project on time. Slowly, her group began to follow her suggestions. She did not demand respect. She earned it through action. Outside the classroom, she kept her kindness alive. When a student dropped their lunch tray, she helped pick up the food without a word. When another student was nervous about presenting in front of the class, she offered to practice with them quietly after school. She noticed small moments of struggle and never walked past without helping. She began to realize that even small acts of care could create connections that were stronger than words or laughter. Sometimes, the teasing continued. A group of students would laugh when she spoke or whispered comments about her simple clothes. She felt the sting of their words, but she refused to respond with anger. Instead, she focused on what she could control: her work, her behavior, and her kindness. She discovered that ignoring ridicule and continuing to act with integrity made her feel stronger inside. At home, she shared small victories with her parents. They listened with smiles and pride, reminding her that strength was not measured by loud voices or popularity. They told her that those who laughed now might one day see her true worth. The girl felt comforted and motivated. She knew the journey would take time, but she was learning how to stay patient and true to herself. One day, a student in her class accidentally spilled ink on their notebook. The class laughed at the student's misfortune. Without thinking, the girl offered her own notebook to copy the work. The student looked surprised and thanked her. For the first time, the girl noticed a small change. Other classmates looked at her differently. They began to see that she was dependable and willing to help without asking for recognition. In the library, she found another way to shine quietly. She noticed that some students struggled to find the books they needed. She started helping them locate resources, showing them where the information could be found. Students began coming to her for help, asking for advice on schoolwork or homework. She became known as someone reliable and patient. Her quiet confidence started to make a difference in the lives of those around her. Her teachers also began to notice. They saw that she not only completed her own work, but also supported her classmates without being asked. The teacher would sometimes pause and smile at her contributions, recognizing the effort that others did not yet appreciate. Slowly, she started gaining respect, not because she demanded it, but because she proved her worth through consistent, caring actions. During school events, she continued to support others quietly. Whether it was helping set up decorations, guiding younger students, or cheering for classmates during competitions, she was always present. She did not seek the spotlight, but her efforts did not go unnoticed. Slowly, more students began to include her, recognizing that her presence brought a sense of calm and reliability that made any task smoother. Even as small gestures of appreciation began to appear, she never let it change her core nature. She remained humble, helping whenever she could and treating everyone with kindness. She learned that real leadership was not about being the loudest or the most popular, but about inspiring others through action and care. Some days were harder than others. When students whispered or laughed, she would take deep breaths and remind herself that she was on her own journey. She started keeping a small notebook in which she wrote down moments that made her proud, helping a friend, receiving a kind word from a teacher, or successfully completing a challenging assignment. These notes became a source of motivation when the world outside seemed unkind. Her friendships grew slowly but surely. Other quiet students began to approach her, feeling safe in her presence. They shared stories, concerns, and dreams. In her patience, she found friends who appreciated her for who she was, not for what she looked like or how popular she could be. Together, they created a small circle of understanding and trust, a safe space in a world that often valued loudness over sincerity. The girl also discovered the importance of listening. When her classmates faced challenges, she would sit and listen attentively. They noticed that she never judged or rushed to speak. She simply cared. Over time, students began to trust her with their thoughts and feelings, sharing things they did not share with anyone else. She became someone who could calm worries, solve small disputes, and encourage others without ever raising her voice. In the classroom, her influence was becoming more visible. Group work ran more smoothly when she was involved. Classmates who had previously ignored her started asking her opinion on projects and assignments. Even if they did not always follow her advice, they respected her perspective. She realized that influence did not come from being loud or forceful, but from showing integrity, skill, and empathy consistently. The girl's inner strength grew as well. She learned to face challenges calmly, to help others without expecting anything in return, and to maintain her dignity even in the face of teasing. She understood that the world would not always recognize her efforts, but she also discovered that recognition was not the only reward. The feeling of doing the right thing, of making someone else's day better, was reward enough. One morning, the teacher assigned a difficult task that required collaboration. The group was confused and started arguing. The girl quietly suggested a plan, dividing the work according to each person's strengths. She listened to each suggestion, considered each idea, and helped mediate disagreements. Slowly, her group followed her lead. When the assignment was completed successfully, the students felt proud, and they realized that the quiet girl had guided them through without ever demanding attention. Even outside academics, she continued to make small differences. During lunch breaks, she noticed students who were alone or sad. She would sit with them, offer kind words, or simply share a smile. Sometimes it was just a small gesture, but those moments mattered. Students began to feel that she was someone who cared genuinely, someone they could trust, someone who made the room feel warmer without even trying. By the end of the term, the girl had quietly transformed her environment. She was still quiet, still humble, and still simple, but her actions spoke louder than words. Students began to include her. Teachers began to notice her reliability, and her small acts of kindness created ripples that reached further than she ever imagined. She had not sought attention or praise, but she had started becoming an important part of her school community. Through it all, the girl learned that patience and persistence were powerful tools. She discovered that being kind, observant, and helpful could gradually change the way others saw her. Her journey was not about immediate recognition or popularity. It was about being true to herself and using her quiet strength to make a difference. And as she walked home each day, tired but content, she realized that even in a world that often dismisses the quiet, one person's patience and care could begin to change everything. The next term brought new challenges, but also new opportunities for the girl. She had grown quietly, gaining a small circle of friends who appreciated her kindness, and teachers who began to notice her careful efforts. Still, there were students who continued to underestimate her. She learned to accept that not everyone would change quickly, but she stayed focused on what she could control, her actions and her attitude. One day, the teacher announced a big group project that would count heavily toward grades. Students groaned and began arguing about roles and responsibilities. The girl observed quietly, noticing that the group's energy was scattered and unfocused. No one had stepped forward to organize the tasks, and the project risked falling apart before it even began. She raised her hand softly and suggested a plan. She spoke calmly, explaining how the work could be divided according to each person's strengths. Some students ignored her at first, but she continued patiently, showing how her method could make the work easier and more organized. Gradually, the group began to listen. She encouraged each member, ensuring that everyone had a role and that no one felt left out. By the end of the class, the group had a clear plan and a sense of direction. As the project progressed over the next few weeks, the girl quietly guided her team. She reminded members of deadlines, offered to help when someone struggled, and mediated small disagreements without ever raising her voice. The students began to realize that her suggestions were valuable, and slowly respect replaced the initial doubt. The project became a turning point. The quiet girl who had been dismissed was now someone her classmates depended on for guidance. Her role was not about taking credit, but about making sure the work was done well and fairly. She never boasted or demanded recognition. Instead, she worked diligently, checking that every detail was completed with care. Her group members began to notice how her patience and attention made the task less stressful and more successful. By the time the project was finished, it stood out not only for its quality, but for the teamwork and harmony that the girl had quietly nurtured. Beyond the classroom, she continued her acts of kindness and quiet leadership. She helped students who were new or shy, guiding them through the school's routines. She noticed when someone was having a bad day and offered a small gesture, a smile, a note of encouragement, or a gentle word. These acts began to shift how people perceived her. The laughter and whispers that once followed her now started to soften. People began to see her as someone reliable, kind, and thoughtful. The teachers also began to recognize her talents. They saw her not only completing her own work with care, but also supporting her peers consistently. They started giving her small responsibilities like organizing classroom materials, leading a discussion, or helping younger students with reading. She accepted these tasks quietly, without seeking praise, but the acknowledgement was a quiet affirmation that she was growing in her abilities and influence. At home, she reflected on her journey. She shared stories with her parents about the small successes she had experienced and the challenges she faced. They reminded her that these were important steps, that influence was built slowly, and that her patience and kindness were shaping her into a remarkable person. Their encouragement fueled her determination to continue, no matter the obstacles. The girl's quiet leadership extended to her friendships as well. Her small circle of friends had grown, drawn to her calm presence and her ability to listen without judgment. They began to confide in her, seeking advice and comfort. She learned the importance of being present for others, offering support without trying to control their choices. Her friends felt safe around her, and her influence expanded quietly, one relationship at a time. One day, the school organized a debate competition. Many students were excited to participate while others felt nervous and unsure. The girl noticed a classmate struggling to prepare their speech. She approached them and offered to practice together. They went through the speech line by line, and she helped them find confidence in their voice. When the classmate presented, they performed better than expected. This small victory highlighted the girl's quiet strength. She could help others shine without ever seeking attention for herself. The girl also discovered that her calm and thoughtful nature could resolve conflicts. During a group activity, two classmates began arguing loudly over an idea. She stepped in gently, listening to both sides and summarizing their points clearly. She asked simple questions that helped them see the solution together. Within minutes, the tension dissolved and the group could continue working. The classmates were surprised and grateful, realizing that her patience and clarity had made a difference. Even in moments of personal challenge, she remained composed. There were times when the teasing or dismissiveness returned. Some students still whispered about her, trying to undermine her confidence. She felt hurt, But she learned to turn these moments inward, reminding herself that she could not control others' opinions, only her own actions. This self-awareness became a source of strength, allowing her to continue growing despite obstacles. Her efforts began to have ripple effects. Students who had once ignored her started approaching her for guidance, trusting her advice and appreciating her calm presence. Teachers increasingly relied on her for small leadership tasks, noting her maturity and reliability. Slowly, the girl who had been overlooked was becoming a central figure in her school community, not because she demanded it, but because she had earned it through consistent kindness, patience, and competence. The girl also explored ways to contribute creatively. She suggested ideas for class projects, decorations for events, and ways to make learning more engaging. While some students initially dismissed her suggestions, her ideas often proved practical and effective. Gradually, more classmates began to listen, appreciating that she brought thoughtful, realistic solutions to the table. Her voice, once soft and easily ignored, began to carry weight through action rather than loudness. She discovered that small gestures mattered as much as big ones. A kind word, a smile at the right moment, or a quiet offer to help could brighten someone's day or change the way they viewed her. She continued to notice the small struggles of those around her and offered support in ways that felt natural and sincere. Slowly, her reputation as a caring, dependable, and wise student spread beyond her immediate circle. The girl's inner confidence grew alongside her influence. She realized that being true to herself, helping others, and remaining patient in the face of challenges were more valuable than seeking immediate recognition. She started to see the impact she could have on her environment, understanding that real change often begins quietly and grows steadily over time. By the end of the term, the results of her efforts were clear. The group project she had guided received praise from teachers for its organization and teamwork. Students who had once doubted her began to ask for her input and guidance. Her friendships had deepened, and her quiet influence had created a sense of trust and warmth in her surroundings. She had moved from being overlooked to becoming someone who quietly held the respect of those around her. Even as her influence grew, she remained humble. She never boasted or demanded acknowledgement. She understood that true strength was not in loud recognition but in steady, caring action. She continued to focus on helping others, improving herself, and maintaining her integrity. Her journey was far from over, but the foundation she had built was strong and meaningful. One afternoon after school, she sat quietly in the library, reflecting on how much she had grown. She remembered the first days when she had felt invisible and dismissed. Now she was beginning to see the results of her patience and persistence. Her actions were making a difference even in small ways, and her confidence was growing alongside her impact. She realized that being true to herself and supporting others quietly was more powerful than she had ever imagined. The girl understood that leadership, respect, and influence were not about being loud, flashy, or popular. They were about patience, kindness, empathy, and consistent effort. She had learned to see her own value, to recognize the importance of small acts of care, and to trust that her quiet strength would continue to grow and touch others. And as she closed her notebook and prepared to leave, she felt a deep sense of calm and purpose, knowing that her journey had just begun, and that her quiet heart could make a difference in ways she had never expected. The girl walked into the school with a quiet confidence that had grown over the past months. She still carried herself humbly, wore simple clothes, and spoke softly, but people around her had begun to notice the warmth she brought into every space. Her classmates were beginning to see her as someone they could rely on, someone who made the room feel calmer and more welcoming. One day, the teacher asked for volunteers to organize a school event. The students looked around, unsure who would step up. Many whispered and laughed nervously, not wanting the responsibility. The girl quietly raised her hand. She did not boast or demand attention. She simply offered to help. The teacher smiled and nodded, appreciating her willingness. As she worked on the event, she noticed small challenges that needed attention. Some students were struggling with tasks, some decorations were missing, and some arrangements needed careful planning. She calmly addressed each problem, helping where needed and offering guidance without being bossy. Slowly, her classmates began to follow her lead. They realized that her calm approach made the work easier and more organized. During the preparations, she helped students who were shy or unsure. She encouraged them gently, explaining each task and giving them confidence. Some students were surprised at how naturally she guided everyone without seeking credit. She learned that leading quietly could create a strong sense of teamwork and respect. By the time the event started, the atmosphere was full of energy, cooperation, and excitement, much of it because of the girls' quiet guidance. During the event, she continued to help wherever she could. She noticed a student feeling nervous about performing, so she offered a few words of encouragement and a small gesture of support. The student performed confidently, and others who had been struggling found themselves able to contribute more. People began to see the girl as someone who cared deeply about others, someone who could bring out the best in everyone around her. Even in moments where things went wrong, she remained composed. When decorations fell or schedules changed, she calmly found solutions and helped others adjust. Her patience and reliability made others feel safe and supported. Slowly, more students began to look to her for guidance, not because they were forced to, but because they trusted her judgment and kindness. At home, she reflected on the experience. She wrote in her notebook about the small victories, the moments when she had helped someone, resolved a problem, or encouraged a classmate. She realized that even without being the center of attention, she could make a lasting impact. She felt proud, not because others praised her, but because she had stayed true to herself and helped others along the way. In the weeks that followed, the girl's influence grew naturally. Her classmates began seeking her advice on group work, personal problems, and school activities. Her quiet leadership became a constant, reliable presence in the classroom. People started to understand that she had a unique way of bringing harmony and encouragement to every situation, making the room feel warmer and more connected. Her teachers noticed the change as well. They saw that she was not only responsible for her own work, but also helped maintain a positive environment for everyone. They began assigning her tasks that required responsibility, such as mentoring younger students, leading small groups, or assisting with school activities. She accepted these tasks quietly and with dedication, never seeking praise, yet her efforts were increasingly appreciated. The girl's friends also noticed the difference. Her small circle of classmates, who had once been quiet and unsure, began to shine with her encouragement. She listened to their concerns, offered support, and celebrated their successes without drawing attention to herself. She became the heart of her friend group, someone who lifted everyone's spirits with small, thoughtful gestures. Her quiet nature became a source of strength for others. During class discussions, she contributed ideas in her gentle voice. At first, some students ignored her, but gradually, her suggestions were considered carefully and implemented. She discovered that speaking thoughtfully and acting with sincerity could make her ideas respected even if her voice was soft. Her presence became more influential, not through dominance but through consistency and kindness. Outside of schoolwork, she continued to support her peers. She noticed when someone was alone or upset and offered a smile, a comforting word, or just her quiet presence. Students who had once dismissed her began to approach her, seeking friendship, advice, or help. She discovered that genuine care and attention could transform relationships, turning dismissal into respect and warmth. Even as her influence spread, she remained humble. She did not try to control others or demand recognition. She learned that true leadership came from understanding, empathy, and consistent effort. Her actions inspired others quietly, creating an environment where cooperation, kindness, and mutual respect became the norm. One afternoon, the school hosted a competition where students had to work in teams. The girls' team faced difficulties as some members argued and others felt unsure of their abilities. She listened patiently, offered calm guidance, and helped everyone find a role that suited their strengths. Slowly, the team came together, working efficiently and supporting one another. The competition became not just about winning, but about learning to work together with understanding and patience. Her classmates began to see the value of her quiet guidance. They realized that she had a unique way of helping people feel included and capable. She never forced anyone to follow her ideas, yet her thoughtful approach naturally drew people to her. By encouraging others, listening carefully, and remaining patient, she became the center of positive energy in her classroom. The girl's inner confidence continued to grow. She understood that being true to herself, helping others, and remaining patient were more important than seeking immediate recognition. She realized that influence and respect could be earned through consistent, caring action rather than loud words or attention-seeking. Her quiet strength became her most powerful tool. Even students who had once mocked her began to change. They noticed her dedication, her ability to help others, and her calming presence. Slowly, their attitudes shifted from dismissal to appreciation. Some started asking for her advice, including her in group activities, or simply acknowledging her efforts with a small smile. Her journey from being overlooked to becoming the heart of the room was becoming visible. During school events, she continued to shine quietly. She helped organize activities, supported participants, and ensured that everyone felt included. Her efforts were not about recognition, but about making the environment better for everyone. People began to rely on her not because they had to, but because they trusted her care, patience, and judgment. The girl also learned to celebrate small moments of success. She noticed when a student overcame a fear, when a team worked together smoothly, or when someone smiled after a difficult day. These moments became meaningful, reminding her that her actions, though quiet, were powerful. She discovered that creating positive change did not require loud gestures. It could grow steadily, quietly, and persistently. By the end of the school term, the girl had truly become the heart of the room. Her classmates respected and trusted her. Her teachers valued her reliability and kindness, and her small acts of care had created a warmer, more supportive environment. She had not sought attention, yet her influence had grown naturally through patience, empathy, and consistent action. She reflected on how far she had come since the first day, when she felt invisible and dismissed. She realized that being humble, kind, and true to herself had allowed her to build trust, inspire others, and create a positive atmosphere. Her quiet presence had become a source of strength, encouragement, and stability for those around her. She had discovered that real power lay not in loudness or attention, but in the ability to touch hearts and bring out the best in others. Walking home one afternoon, she thought about the journey so far. She knew challenges would continue, and some students might still misunderstand her or fail to recognize her efforts. But she also knew that her quiet strength, patience, and kindness were making a real difference. She had become someone people could rely on, someone who could inspire and support others without ever seeking the spotlight. The girl smiled, knowing that being the heart of the room was more than a title. It was a way of living, and she had embraced it fully. The girl had come a long way since the first day she walked into her school. She remembered how invisible she had felt, how the laughter and whispers of classmates had stung, and how she had worried about fitting in. But now, everything had changed in quiet and meaningful ways. Her patience, kindness, and humility had built a foundation that made her an important part of her school community. It began with small actions. She continued to help classmates who were struggling, encouraged those who lacked confidence, and listened to anyone who needed to talk. Her quiet presence became a source of comfort for many students. Even those who had once mocked or ignored her started to notice the difference she made. They realized that she had a calm strength, a way of making everyone around her feel included and supported. One day, the school organized a large event where all students had to participate in different roles. The girl immediately noticed students who were unsure or nervous. She quietly offered her guidance, helping them understand their tasks and giving them confidence. Her actions made the event run smoothly. Teachers observed how she managed to bring harmony to a chaotic situation without ever demanding attention. Students followed her advice because they trusted her judgment and appreciated her kindness. During the event, a younger student dropped a stack of papers and began to cry. The girl gently knelt beside them, helping pick up the papers and speaking softly to calm them. Other students saw this and began to understand her true nature. She did not seek praise or recognition. She only wanted to help. Slowly, her peers started to treat her differently, respecting her and valuing her presence. The room that had once ignored her was now drawn to her energy. In the classroom, she continued to excel quietly. She completed assignments with care, helped others understand lessons, and suggested ideas for group activities. Her classmates began to see her as a leader, not through loud words or dominance, but through consistent action. They began asking for her opinion, including her in discussions and even defending her when others tried to tease her. The girl's quiet influence had become undeniable. Her teachers noticed her growth as well. They began assigning her more responsibilities, such as mentoring younger students, helping organize school events, and leading small groups. She accepted these tasks with humility, never seeking recognition but performing them with dedication. Her efforts inspired others to do their best, creating an environment of cooperation and care. At home, she reflected on her journey. She wrote in her journal about the small moments that had made the biggest difference, the smiles she had encouraged, the friendships she had nurtured, the problems she had helped solve. Her parents were proud and reminded her that the greatest impact often comes from quiet strength. They told her that she was learning a lesson many never do, that true leadership comes from helping others and staying true to oneself. The girl's friendships had grown as well. Her small circle of friends, once shy and hesitant, became confident and engaged because of her encouragement. She listened without judgment, celebrated their successes, and supported them in times of difficulty. Her ability to make people feel valued had created bonds of trust and respect. Her friends began to see her not just as a peer, but as someone who truly cared about their well-being. One afternoon, the school held a competition requiring teamwork. Her group was nervous and some members doubted their abilities. She calmly guided them, dividing tasks according to strengths and encouraging collaboration. Slowly, the team began to work smoothly. By the end of the competition, they performed exceptionally well. Her classmates realized that her quiet guidance had made the difference, allowing them to shine together rather than individually. The girl continued to inspire through small gestures. She helped classmates with personal struggles, offered a listening ear, and shared encouragement when it was most needed. She discovered that being patient, understanding, and consistent could influence people far more than loud words or attention-seeking behavior. Students who had once overlooked her now approached her for guidance and support, recognizing the warmth and wisdom she brought to every situation. Her influence extended beyond academics. She participated in school activities, organized small events, and ensured that everyone felt included. Her calm presence created an atmosphere where students could cooperate and succeed. Teachers admired her ability to lead without demanding recognition, and classmates respected her not only for what she could do, but also for who she was. The girl also learned to celebrate her own growth quietly. She reflected on the challenges she had faced, the teasing she had endured, and the moments when she felt invisible. She understood that every small step had contributed to her strength and influence. She realized that the journey was just as important as the outcome, and that staying true to herself had allowed her to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. One day, during a group activity, a disagreement arose between classmates. The girl stepped in calmly, listening to both sides and helping them find a solution together. She guided the conversation without asserting authority, simply encouraging understanding and cooperation. By the end, the group had resolved their conflict and everyone felt heard and respected. Her ability to mediate and foster harmony had become one of her most valued qualities. Even students who had once mocked her began to change. They noticed her consistent kindness, her reliability, and her ability to help others succeed. Slowly, their attitudes shifted from dismissal to respect and admiration. Some began to approach her for advice, while others included her in their activities and conversations. The girl had transformed from being overlooked to becoming a central figure in her school, not by seeking attention but by earning trust through her actions. As the school year progressed, she continued to grow in quiet confidence. She took on challenges without fear, supported her peers, and remained true to her values. Her small acts of kindness, patience, and empathy had created a ripple effect, influencing not only her friends and classmates but the entire classroom environment. She had become someone who could make people feel included, valued, and supported. By the end of the year, the girl reflected on her journey. She remembered the first days when she had felt invisible, the teasing and whispers that had hurt her, and the uncertainty she had felt about fitting in. She realized how far she had come. Her quiet strength, consistent kindness, and unwavering patience had transformed her from a dismissed student into the heart of the room. She understood that real influence did not come from being loud or seeking attention. It came from being true to oneself, helping others, and maintaining patience and empathy. Her journey had taught her that even small actions, repeated consistently, could create meaningful change. She had discovered the power of quiet leadership, and it had changed not only her life but the lives of everyone around her. Walking through the school halls one afternoon, she noticed students smiling, sharing, and helping each other. Some of them looked at her with respect and warmth, and she felt a quiet satisfaction. She did not need to be the center of attention. She had become someone who mattered, someone whose presence made the room better, someone who inspired others through her actions. The girl knew that challenges would continue, and there would still be moments of difficulty. But she also knew that her patience, kindness, and quiet strength would help her face any challenge. She had learned that true power lay in helping others, staying true to oneself and remaining consistent in doing what was right. As she left school that day, she felt a sense of fulfillment. She had become the heart of the room, not because she had sought it, but because she had earned it through her actions, empathy, and integrity. Her journey from being dismissed to being valued had shown her that the quiet, consistent, and genuine approach to life could create real and lasting change. She smiled, knowing that her journey was ongoing and that she would continue to touch hearts and inspire those around her, quietly but powerfully.